police officer had his gun pointed at my head. I was 21 years old, wearing an emerald green dress that cost me 3 months of tips from my waitressing job, and I was being treated like a violent criminal on the side of a Highway 17. My hands were shaking against the cold metal of the Mercedes hood, my cheek pressed against the smooth paint, and all I could think was that my own father had done this to me. He had called 911 and told them I was armed dangerous and had stolen his car. In South Carolina, that kind of false report could get you killed, and he knew it. But before I tell you how I ended up here, before I explain why my own family wanted me arrested or worse, I need you to understand something. If you have ever felt invisible in your own home, if you have ever been the one everyone takes from, but nobody gives to, if you have ever wondered when it will be your turn to matter, then this story is for you. Please hit that like button, subscribe, to hear more stories like this, and drop a comment below telling me if you have ever been the family scapegoat. Because what happened to me that night changed everything. Let me take you back to the beginning, to 6 months before my 21st birthday, when I still believed that if I just tried hard enough, my family would finally see me. I was a junior at the College of Charleston studying architecture. My older sister, Tiffany, was 25 and had been living at home rent-free since she dropped out of cosmetology school 4 years earlier. She called herself an influencer, but her TikTok account had maybe 300 followers, most of them bots. Meanwhile, I was working 30 hours a week at Magnolia's, a 5-star restaurant downtown, taking a full course load and still making the dean's list every semester. But none of that mattered to my parents, Gary and Brenda. Every Sunday, we had family dinner. It was supposedly sacred the one time we all came together, but really, it was just another opportunity for them to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy. I would arrive with groceries I had paid for with my tip money, cook the entire meal while Tiffany sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, and then serve everyone while they barely acknowledged I existed. After dinner, my father would corner me in the kitchen. One particular Sunday in March, I remember he leaned against the counter while I was elbow deep in the dishwater and said, "Kayla, your sister needs $500 for a photography course. It is going to help her influencer career take off. You have got money from that restaurant job, right?" I had been saving for months to pay for my studio materials for my advanced design class. The model I needed to build for my midterm was going to cost at least $400 in supplies alone. But when I hesitated, my mother walked in and gave me that look. The look that said I was selfish, ungrateful, and a bad daughter. I gave Tiffany the money. She never took the photography course. Instead, she spent it on a weekend trip to Myrtle Beach with her boyfriend of the month, posting photos with cocktails and designer sunglasses she could not afford. When I asked her about the course, she rolled her eyes and said, "God, Kayla, you are so uptight. I needed a mental health break. You would not understand because you have no life." That was my reality for years. I paid for Tiffany's phone bill when she racked up charges she could not cover. I covered the electric bill when my father gambled away the money at the boat casino. I bought my mother's birthday present and Christmas gifts for the whole family with my own money, and Tiffany would take the credit saying she picked them out. I never got anything in return, not even a thank you card. The worst part was not the money, it was the invisibility. On my 20th birthday, I had hinted for weeks that I wanted to go to this new Italian restaurant that had opened near the waterfront. Instead, my parents took Tiffany to a spa day because she was stressed from a breakup. They forgot my birthday entirely until I reminded them 3 days later. My father handed me a $20 bill and said, "Go buy yourself something nice, kiddo." So when my 21st birthday was approaching, I decided I was going to do something different. Turning 21 in America is a big deal. It is the legal drinking age, the threshold into real adulthood. I wanted one night, just one single night, where I felt special. I started planning 6 months in advance. I saved every single penny. I picked up extra shifts, even working doubles on weekends when I should have been studying. I booked a private room at Magnolia's, the same restaurant where I worked because my manager gave me a staff discount. I invited my college friends, my roommate Sophie, even my ex-boyfriend Austin, who had become one of my closest friends after we broke up. I bought that emerald green dress at a consignment shop, but it fit like it was made for me. I got my hair done at a beauty school where the students practice cuts for cheap. Everything was planned down to the minute. The dinner was supposed to start at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night. I had been dreaming about this for months. The morning of my birthday, I woke up early and went to my shift at Magnolia's. My manager Carlos surprised me with a birthday cupcake during my break. My co-workers sang to me in the kitchen. It felt like maybe, just maybe, this was going to be a good day. I finished my shift at 3 p.m., drove home to my parents' house where I still had a room, even though I spent most nights at my apartment near campus and started getting ready. I spent 2 hours on my hair and makeup. I wanted everything perfect. The dress looked even better than I remembered when I slipped it on. I practiced my smile in the mirror, imagining walking into that restaurant and seeing my friends' faces light up. For once, I was going to be the centre of attention for the right reasons. At 6:30 p.m, I came down the stairs holding my clutch purse with my ID and the credit card I had been saving on. I expected to see my parents dressed up ready to drive over to the restaurant with me. Instead, the living room was dark except for the glow of the television. My father was on the couch in his undershirt and boxers eating pizza straight from a cardboard box. My mother was in her bathrobe, hair in curlers, flipping through a magazine. And Tiffany was sprawled on the love seat in a stained sleep shirt that said Princess. Across the front, her face bare and blotchy. I stood there in my emerald dress, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, and nobody even looked up. Finally, I said, "Are you guys not getting ready? We need to leave in 20 minutes. My mother glanced at me like I had just asked the stupidest question in the world. She sighed heavily and said, "Oh, honey, we cannot do your party tonight. Tiffany is going through something." I looked at my sister. She was staring at her phone thumbs flying across the screen. She did not look like she was going through anything except her Instagram feed. I said, "What happened?" That was when Tiffany looked up with this dramatic, practiced expression of devastation. Her eyes got wide and shiny, her lip trembled, and she let out this choked sob that sounded fake even to my untrained ear. "Dylan broke up with me," she wailed. "He said I was too needy. He said I was immature. How could he do this to me?" Dylan was her boyfriend of 6 weeks. This was the same Dylan she had cheated on twice and complained about constantly. This was the Dylan she had literally called a broke loser with no ambition just last Tuesday. But now, he was her one true love, and his breakup was apparently a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. My father set down his pizza and looked at me with this stern expression. "Family comes first, Kayla. Your sister needs us right now. You need to cancel your plans and be here for her." I felt something crack inside my chest. I said, "Dad, this is my 21st birthday. I have been planning this for 6 months. I paid for everything myself. Everyone is already on their way to the restaurant." My mother stood up and crossed her arms. "That is very selfish of you, Kayla. Your sister is in emotional distress. What kind of person chooses a party over family?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask where this family loyalty was when they forgot my last birthday. I wanted to ask why Tiffany's 5th breakup this year was more important than the milestone I had worked so hard to celebrate. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "I am still going. You guys can stay here with Tiffany, but I am going to my party." That was when my father stood up. He was a big man, 6'2" and heavy set, and he used his size to intimidate. He walked over to me and said in this low, dangerous voice, "You are not going anywhere. You are going to take off that ridiculous dress, sit down with your family, and help your sister through this crisis. Do you understand me?" Tiffany was watching now with this little smirk on her face. She was enjoying this. She had done this on purpose. I realized it all at once. She had waited until my birthday, until the exact moment when I was supposed to have something for myself, and she had manufactured a crisis to steal the attention back. This was not about Dylan. This was about making sure I stayed in my place. Something shifted in me. Maybe it was the months of saving and planning. Maybe it was the years of being overlooked and used. Maybe it was just that I was finally old enough to realize I deserved better. I looked my father in the eye and said no. He blinked. Nobody ever said no to Gary. "What did you say to me?" I repeated myself clearer this time. "No, I am not cancelling my plans. I am going to my party." His face turned red. He reached out and grabbed my purse right out of my hands. I tried to hold on, but he yanked it hard enough that the chain strap broke. He opened it, pulled out my wallet, and threw the whole purse across the room. It hit the wall and fell behind the couch. Then he did something I will never forget. He took my wallet, pulled out my credit card and my cash, and walked over to Tiffany. He dropped them in her lap and said, "Here, baby girl, take your sister's card and go shopping tomorrow. Buy yourself something pretty. You deserve to feel better." Tiffany picked up my card and examined it like it was a gift she had been expecting. She looked at me and said, "Thanks, Kay. You are the best little sister ever." I felt numb. I watched my father go back to his pizza. I watched my mother sit back down and return to her magazine like nothing had happened. I watched Tiffany slip my credit card into her phone case with a satisfied smile. And I realised that, to them, I was not a daughter or a sister. I was an ATM. I was a resource to be drained. I was the designated giver and they were the takers. And this was never going to change unless I changed it. I walked very calmly to the hallway closet. My father called after me, "Where are you going?" I did not answer. I opened the closet and pulled out the lockbox on the top shelf, the one where my father kept important documents. I knew the combination because I had watched him open it 100 times. Inside was the title to his Mercedes C-Class, the car he drove every day and was so proud of. Except the title was not in his name. It was in Uncle Logan's name. Uncle Logan was not really my uncle. He was my father's older brother and the only member of the family who had ever been successful. Logan had made his fortune in commercial real estate in Charleston and Atlanta. He owned shopping centres and apartment complexes and had more money than he knew what to do with. He had bought my father the Mercedes 5 years ago as a gift, but he kept it in his own name because my father's credit was terrible from his gambling debts. The car was technically on loan. Also, in that lockbox was something my father did not know I knew about. A black American Express card with my name on it. Uncle Logan had sent it to me 6 months ago with a note that said, "For emergencies or opportunities, use it wisely. Do not tell your father." I had never used it, but I kept checking to make sure my parents had not found it and taken it. Now I pulled it out along with the Mercedes keys. I walked back into the living room. My father saw the keys in my hand and stood up fast enough that his pizza box fell on the floor. "Put those back right now, Kayla. That is my car." I smiled at him. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who has finally stopped caring about keeping the peace. "Actually, Dad, this is Uncle Logan's car. You just drive it, and since you just stole my money to give to Tiffany, I think I will borrow Uncle Logan's car to go to my birthday party." Tiffany jumped up from the couch. "You are not taking that car, you little bitch!" She lunged at me, fingers reaching for my hair like we were in middle school. But I had spent the last 6 months carrying heavy trays at a busy restaurant. I was stronger than I looked. I sidestepped her, put my hand on her shoulder and pushed. Not hard, but enough. She stumbled backward and fell onto the couch, her legs flailing. My mother screamed. My father started toward me. I backed toward the door, keys in one hand, black card in the other. I looked at all three of them and said very clearly, "I am going to my party. I am going to celebrate my 21st birthday. And do not wait up because I am not coming back here tonight." And I walked out the front door, got into the Mercedes, and started the engine. Through the window, I could see my father on the phone yelling. Tiffany was crying real tears this time because she had not gotten her way. My mother was trying to physically block the driveway with her bathrobe flapping in the wind. I put the car in reverse and backed out slowly, forcing her to move. Then, I drove away from that house and I felt lighter than I had in years. I made it about 10 miles down Highway 17 toward downtown Charleston when I saw the blue lights in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was just a traffic stop. Maybe I had been speeding without realizing it. But then 2 more police cars appeared boxing me in. Officers got out with their hands on their guns, and I heard someone shout, "Driver, turn off the vehicle and put your hands where we can see them." My heart stopped. I turned off the car with shaking hands and raised them above my head. An officer approached my window, gun drawn but lowered, and said, "Ma'am, please step out of the vehicle slowly." I did exactly what he said. I got out of the car in my emerald dress and my heels, and they made me put my hands on the hood. That was when the female officer patted me down and asked, "Where is the weapon?" I said, "What weapon? I do not have a weapon." The male officer, whose name tag said Morrison, looked confused. He said, "We got a call that this vehicle was stolen, and the suspect was armed and potentially suicidal." And that was when I understood what my father had done. He had not just called to report the car stolen. He had told them I was dangerous. In a state where police shootings were not uncommon, where a scared officer might make a split-second decision, my own father had put me in mortal danger because I dared to stand up to him. I started crying then, not from fear, but from rage. I said, "That is my father's car, except it is not really his car. It belongs to Logan Pierce. I can prove it." Officer Morrison looked at his partner. "Pierce, like Pierce Properties, Logan Pierce." I nodded. "He is my uncle, well, my dad's brother. The car is in his name. I have permission to drive it. My father called this in because we had a fight and he wanted to punish me. The officers made me sit on the curb while they ran the plates and made some calls. I sat there in my beautiful dress mascara, running down my face, watching traffic go by on the highway. People stared. Some slowed down to look. I checked my phone and saw 17 missed calls from my mother and a dozen texts from Tiffany calling me every name in the book. Then I saw a text from Austin. "Where are you? Everyone is at the restaurant waiting. Are you okay?" I typed back with shaking thumbs. "Long story, been pulled over, might not make it." His response was immediate. "Send me your location, I am coming." 20 minutes later, a sleek black Audi pulled up behind the police cars, and Austin got out. But he was not alone. Behind him was another car, a silver Lexus, and out stepped Uncle Logan himself. I had not seen him in over a year. He lived in Atlanta most of the time and only came to Charleston for business. He was in his 50s, tall and lean, with silver hair and the kind of presence that made people straighten their posture. He was wearing a suit even on a Saturday evening, because that was just who he was. Austin rushed over to me first. "Kayla, what the hell happened?" Before I could answer, Logan was already talking to Officer Morrison, his lawyer voice cutting through everything. "Gentlemen, I'm Logan Pierce. I own that Mercedes. This young woman is my niece, and she has my full permission to drive any of my vehicles. I apologize for the confusion, but this was a false report made by my brother, who does not own the car and had no right to report it stolen." Officer Morrison looked relieved. False reports were a headache nobody wanted to deal with. He said, "Mr. Pierce, we are going to need some documentation." Logan pulled out his phone and within minutes had emailed copies of the car's registration insurance and a notarized letter giving me permission to use his vehicles. He also had his lawyer on speakerphone, a woman named Jennifer something, who spoke in clipped professional tones and made it very clear that pressing charges against me would be a huge mistake. The officers let me go with a warning about family disputes. Officer Morrison actually apologized to me. "Ma'am, I am sorry you were put in this position. For what it is worth, we are noting in our report that this was a false claim. Your father could face charges for filing a false police report." I thanked him, my voice hoarse. Once the police left, Logan turned to me. Up close, I could see he was angry, but not at me. His jaw was tight and his eyes were cold. "Kayla, get in my car. We need to talk." Austin squeezed my hand. I will drive the Mercedes, meet you at your party. Logan shook his head. Cancel the party, Austin. Tell everyone it is postponed. We have more important things to deal with tonight. I wanted to protest, but I was so tired. I got into Logan's Lexus, and he drove us to his penthouse in downtown Charleston, a place I had only been once when I was a kid. It was on the top floor of a historic building that had been converted into luxury condos with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbour. Austin followed in the Mercedes. Once we were inside, Logan poured himself a bourbon and offered me one. I took it, even though my hands were still shaking. He sat across from me in his pristine living room and said, "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." So I did. I told him about the years of being used for money, about Tiffany's fake crisis tonight, about my father stealing my wallet and giving my credit card to my sister. I told him about taking the car and the black card, and I apologised for using his property without asking. Logan held up a hand. "Stop. You have nothing to apologise for. That card is yours. I gave it to you precisely because I suspected this kind of thing was happening. I just did not realise it was this bad." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Jennifer, it is Logan. I need you here to do something for me tonight. Yes, I know it is Saturday. I will pay the overtime." He rattled off instructions about freezing bank accounts, reviewing property titles, and preparing cease and desist letters. When he hung up, he looked at me. "Your father has been living off my charity for 15 years. The house they live in, I own it, the car mine. The credit cards they use linked to an account I fund. As of tonight, all of that stops." I felt panic rising. "Uncle Logan, I did not mean to cause this much trouble. I just wanted to go to my birthday party." He leaned forward. "Kayla, your father called the police and told them you were armed and dangerous. In this state, that could have gotten you killed. Do you understand that he put your life at risk because you dared to defy him? That is not a family squabble. That is criminal." Austin, who had been quiet until now, sat down next to me. "He is right, Kay. What your dad did tonight was insane. You could have been shot." The reality of it hit me all over again, and I started crying. Not pretty crying, but the ugly, gasping kind. Logan handed me a box of tissues and waited patiently until I could breathe again. Over the next few hours, Logan laid out a plan. He was cutting off my father financially effective immediately. The utilities in the house would be shut off by Monday. The credit cards would be cancelled. My father would have 1 month to find somewhere else to live before eviction proceedings started. As for Tiffany, Logan made a call to his credit card company and reported my card as stolen, which it was. They would flag any charges she tried to make. I asked what I was supposed to do. Logan looked at me like the answer was obvious. "You are going to finish your degree. You are going to stop giving them money. And you are going to let me help you the way I should have been helping you all along." He offered to cover my tuition for my senior year, pay for my apartment, and give me a monthly allowance so I did not have to work 30 hours a week. In exchange, all he asked was that I focus on school and cut off contact with my parents until they could treat me with respect. It felt too good to be true. I asked why he was doing this. Logan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because your grandmother asked me to look after you before she died. She saw what your father was like. She set up a trust fund for you, $50,000 that was supposed to be released on your 21st birthday. Your father was the trustee. He forged your signature and drained the account 2 years ago to pay off gambling debts." The room spun. "What?" Logan nodded. "I just found out about it last month when I was reviewing some estate documents. I have been gathering evidence. Jennifer is preparing a lawsuit. What your father did is a federal crime, Kayla. Wire fraud, forgery, theft. He could go to prison." I did not know what to say. $50,000. My grandmother's last gift to me stolen. I thought about all the times my father had lectured me about family loyalty, about sacrifice, about putting others first. And the whole time, he had been stealing from me. Austin stayed with me that night at Logan's penthouse. We ordered takeout and tried to salvage some piece of my birthday. He gave me a present he had brought to the restaurant, a leather-bound sketchbook for my architectural drawings. We sat on Logan's balcony overlooking the harbour, and Austin said, "You know you did the right thing tonight, right, standing up to them?" I wanted to believe him, but I felt guilty. "They are still my family." He shook his head. "Family does not treat you like an ATM. Family does not call the cops and lie to get you arrested. What they did tonight was abusive, Kay. You know that." I did know that. I had known it for a long time. I just had not wanted to admit it. The next morning, Sunday, I woke up to 47 missed calls from my mother and a voicemail from my father that was equal parts threatening and pleading. He said I had ruined the family, that I was selfish and ungrateful, and that I needed to come home immediately and apologise. He also said the power had been shut off and it was my fault. I did not call back. Instead, I spent the day with Logan and his lawyer Jennifer going over everything. We filed a police report about the stolen trust fund money. We got a restraining order against my father after he showed up at Logan's building screaming in the lobby. And I started the process of separating myself from them completely. That week, I moved all my belongings out of my parents' house while they were out. Austin and 2 of his friends helped me. We loaded everything into a U-Haul in under 2 hours. I left my key on the kitchen counter with a note that said, "I will not be back. Do not contact me." The hardest part was not the physical act of leaving, but the emotional weight of it. I kept thinking about the little girl I used to be, the one who tried so hard to make her parents proud. I grieved for her, but I also felt free. For the first time in my life, I was not carrying the weight of their expectations and demands. I was not worried about the next crisis Tiffany would manufacture or the next bill my father would ask me to pay. I was just me. Of course, my family did not take it well. My mother showed up at my apartment crying, begging me to come back. She said I was tearing the family apart. I told her through the door that the family tore itself apart a long time ago. Tiffany tried a different approach. She started a social media campaign against me. She went live on TikTok and Instagram, crying to her small audience about how I had abandoned the family, stolen a car, and was now turning Uncle Logan against them with lies. She claimed I was trying to steal her inheritance, which was funny because Logan had made it clear he was leaving everything to charity. The videos got some traction. A few of them went viral in that sad, trashy way that internet drama does. People who did not know me or my situation left comments calling me a spoiled brat, a gold digger, and worse. Someone found my college email and sent me hate messages. My academic advisor received emails demanding I be expelled for elder abuse, even though my parents were only in their 50s and perfectly healthy. It was Austin who suggested we fight back, but not with words, with evidence. We spent a week compiling everything. Bank statements showing the money I had given them over the years, screenshots of text messages where they demanded cash, receipts for bills I had paid, the police report about the false stolen car claim, the documentation of my father's theft of my trust fund. And then we handed it all over to Jennifer. She sent cease and desist letters to Tiffany, threatening legal action for defamation. She also sent copies of all the evidence to TikTok and Instagram reporting the videos for harassment. Most of them came down within 24 hours. Tiffany was furious. She posted a rant about censorship and cancel culture, but by then, most people had moved on to the next drama. The real turning point came about 3 weeks after my birthday. I was in my advanced studio class working on my thesis project. It was a community-centered design that I had been developing for months, and the final model was going to be the centerpiece of my senior show. The model itself cost over $2,000 in materials. I had built it piece by piece over the semester, cutting balsa wood by hand, creating miniature furniture, even installing tiny LED lights. It was displayed in a locked case in the architecture building lobby, along with the other senior thesis projects. Security cameras monitored the area 24/7. So when I got a call from my professor at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, saying I needed to come to campus immediately, I knew something was wrong. I arrived to find campus police, my professor, and the dean of the architecture school standing around the display case. The glass had been smashed, and my model, my beautiful model that represented 6 months of work, was covered in red paint. Not just splattered, but drenched. Someone had poured an entire gallon over it. The paint had seeped into the wood, destroying everything. Years of work ruined. But the person who did it had not been smart. They had live-streamed the whole thing. Tiffany had walked into the building using a student ID she had kept from her one semester at a different college. She had talked her way past the security desk by claiming to be my sister coming to surprise me. And then she had gone to the display case with a hammer and a gallon of red paint, and she had filmed herself destroying my project while ranting about how I deserved it for ruining her family. The video was still up on her TikTok when the police showed it to me. In it, Tiffany was screaming, "This is what happens when you betray your family, Kayla. This is what you get." She was so focused on her phone camera that she did not notice the security cameras recording her from 3 different angles. I stood there looking at my destroyed model, and I felt strangely calm. I asked the police officer, "Can you arrest her for this?" He nodded. "The damages are over $1,000, which makes this a felony in South Carolina, plus breaking and entering vandalism and trespassing. We already have a warrant out." They caught Tiffany at home 3 hours later. She was still high on the adrenaline of her revenge, still reading supportive comments from the few followers who thought she was justified. She did not even try to run. She actually seemed surprised when they put her in handcuffs. The next day, my parents showed up at the police station with a lawyer they could not afford. They tried to get Tiffany released on bail, but the judge set it at $10,000 because of the video evidence and her online following, which the prosecutor argued made her a flight risk. My parents could not pay it. They called me begging me to use Uncle Logan's money to bail out my sister. I said no. My mother cried. She said I was heartless, that Tiffany was mentally unstable and needed help, not jail. I agreed that Tiffany needed help, but I said that facing consequences for her actions was part of that help. My father got on the phone and threatened me. He said I would regret this, that I was no daughter of his. I said, "Good, I do not want to be your daughter anymore." And I hung up. Logan's lawyer, Jennifer, was brilliant. She not only prosecuted Tiffany's criminal case, but also filed a civil lawsuit for damages. She calculated the cost of my destroyed model, the emotional distress, the impact on my academic career, and she asked for $50,000. The same amount my father had stolen from my trust fund. Tiffany had no money and no assets. The judgment would follow her for years. But the criminal case was what really mattered, because Tiffany had live-streamed her crime, and because the damages exceeded $1,000, she was facing serious charges. The prosecutor offered her a plea deal, 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and full restitution. She would have to pay me back for the model, and she would have a felony on her record. My parents begged me to ask the prosecutor to drop the charges. They showed up at my apartment, at my school, even at the restaurant where I had worked. Security had to escort them out multiple times. Finally, Logan got a restraining order on my behalf. If they came within 500 feet of me, they would be arrested. The court date arrived in late May, right before my graduation. I had to rebuild my thesis model from scratch in 4 weeks, working around the clock. My professors gave me extensions and extra studio access. My classmates helped bringing me coffee and staying late with me. Even Austin, who was in law school, spent his nights in the studio helping me cut wood and mix paint. I finished the model the day before the thesis show. It was not identical to the original, but in some ways it was better. I had learned from my mistakes. The design was cleaner, more refined. When I presented it to the thesis committee, I also presented the story of how I had to rebuild it. I talked about resilience, about starting over, about the architecture of a life reconstructed. I got the highest grade in my class. At graduation, I walked across the stage, summa cum laude. with a job offer from one of the top architecture firms in Charleston already in hand. Uncle Logan was in the audience, beaming with pride. Austin was there too, cheering embarrassingly loud. My parents and Tiffany were not there. Tiffany was doing her court-mandated community service picking up trash on the side of Highway 17 in an orange vest. The day after graduation, I received an email from my mother. It was long and rambling, filled with accusations and self-pity. But at the end, there was a single line that was almost self-aware. "We needed you, and you abandoned us." I wrote back one sentence, "You never needed me. You needed my money." Then I blocked her email address. As for my father, Logan followed through on everything. The house was foreclosed. My parents had to move into a small apartment in a rough part of town. My father's gambling debts caught up with him, and he declared bankruptcy. He also lost his accounting license when the state board found out about the trust fund theft. He ended up working as a clerk at a hardware store. Tiffany's life fell apart in a different way. Her social media accounts were permanently banned after multiple harassment violations. She could not get a real job with a felony record, and the community service destroyed what was left of her influencer image. There is no coming back from videos of yourself picking up trash on the highway while wearing an orange vest. Her followers abandoned her. The last I heard, she was living with my parents in their tiny apartment, all three of them crammed into 800 square feet, and blaming me for everything. I wish I could say I felt nothing about their downfall, but that would be a lie. Sometimes I felt guilty. Sometimes I wondered if I should have handled things differently, been more forgiving, given them another chance. But then I would remember that night on Highway 17 with guns pointed at me because my own father had lied to police. I would remember my destroyed thesis model. I would remember every time they had used me and never once said thank you. 1 year later, I was living in a harbour view apartment designing buildings at my dream firm, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. Austin and I were dating again, this time built on respect instead of obligation. On the anniversary of that nightmare birthday, he gave me a painting of the Mercedes against the Charleston sky. "The car that saved your life," he said, "the moment you chose yourself." That same night, my father texted from my mother's phone, "We need money for rent. Landlord is evicting us. Please." I stared at those words, screenshot them, and sent them to Logan. His reply was instant. "Block the number. You owe them nothing." He was right. I owed them nothing. Not money, not forgiveness, not another chance to destroy me. What they called family was just abuse wrapped in obligation. I blocked the number and checked my savings account, the one I had been building for myself. Every month, the balance grew. Not for them, for my future, my house, my dreams. That night on my balcony, watching the harbour lights dance on the water, I thought about the girl who used to cook Sunday dinners for people who never said thank you. The girl who believed sacrifice would earn her love. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, who understood that real family is not about blood, but about respect. I had lost my parents and sister, but I had gained myself. Best trade I ever made. So let me ask you something. Are you the one who always gives? The one who always sacrifices the family ATM, who never gets a thank you? When is it your turn? When will you realise you deserve better? Here is the truth nobody tells you. You are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not cruel for saying no. You are not a bad person for walking away from people who hurt you, even if they are family. Especially if they are family. The best decision I ever made was driving away in that Mercedes. The second best was never going back. If you are at that crossroads right now wondering if you should stay or leave, you already know the answer. You have always known. You are just scared of the cost. It will cost you. It will cost relationships that were never real. It will cost the fantasy of the family you wish you had. It will cost the comfort of familiar pain. But you will gain yourself, your peace, your future, your freedom. And that is worth everything. If this story hit home, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power. Drop a comment and tell me, have you been the family ATM? What was your breaking point? I read every single one and your story matters. Remember, you are not alone and you are worth so much more than how they treat you.